Okay, now we're going to fit the base of our lining. Before we go any further, we're going to make a few marks. So on the base of my lining, I've just folded it in half, short end to short end, and used the fold to mark the centre on both of the long sides. I've done the same on the short side, so I've got a quarter marks on there. On my two lining panels, I've marked the centre of the bottom edge, and I've just folded them in half to do that, so that's not a big drama, it's not complicated. So I just need one of my lining panels to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lining base, and I'm going to lay it right sides together, matching up those centre marks with my lining panel, and I'm just going to put a few clips in the middle, and in the same way as we did for the outside corners, we are just going to start stitching 3/8 of an inch in from the outside corner. Now I'm going to mark that with my ruler because I just know that I'm not very good at eyeballing, and I don't want my corners to be all puckered, and if I don't get it exactly right, then they will be all puckered. So I'm going to make them, in fact I'll make the markers on all four corners while I'm here doing it, because that makes it life a little bit easier. Probably should have done it before I'd even clipped it on. Food for thought for next time, eh? So I've added my dots in each corner that are 3/8 of an inch away from both of the sides. So that's where I'm going to start stitching and where I'm going to finish stitching. So I'm going to carefully drop my needle down into that mark that I've made. And I'm going to stitch along that side, just reducing my stitch length a little bit. Until I get to the 3/8 of an inch mark that I made at the other end. Go slowly, you don't want to overrun it. And a couple of back stitches. Let's get rid of my threads. I'm going to take my second lining panel, lay it right side up, and I'm going to unfold that base panel from my first side, and I'm going to match up those centre marks on the base and the lining panel. And in exactly the same way as I just did, I'm going to stitch between those 3/8 of an inch marks. What I am going to do though is I'm not going to stitch all the way across. Now I nearly did it. I'm going to leave a gap, as big a gap as I can. So about 5 or 6 inches in the centre of that panel. That's why I knew there was a reason why I put the two clips so far apart, but my mouth didn't say it. So I'm going to stitch from that 3/8 of an inch mark in for approximately 2 inches. And I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to go across to the other side, and again much the same. There you go. See, I almost sabotaged myself. This is what happens when you don't read your own patterns. So there we go. the base is now fitted, and on one side it's fully stitched in, and then the other side there's a large gap. This will be our turning gap. Okay, so I'm just going to push that base out towards the, oops, either out or in, whichever suits you best. But what I want is for these the sides of the main lining panel to be matched up. Now what you really need to do is make sure that you match these two seams, making sure that they're perfectly together, because that will allow that facing panel to be a continual circle of fabric as it goes around the top of your bag. If you don't match them, it will look a bit dodgy. So I'm just going to stitch the one side at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to do the same for the other side, matching up those, carefully matching those seams at the side there, making sure the bottom corners match together. Okay, thank you. That's what happens when you leave your iron on. It tells you, I'm on. Don't burn your house down. And we're going to stitch the other side at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance exactly the same way. Pressing that, and now I'm just going to kind of manipulate the bag a little bit, because what I want to do is I want to open up these side seams and press them open. Now obviously if you've used faux leather or cork for your facing at the top of your lining, you can't press that, so you might need to just finger press it, but I've used fabric, so I am actually going to be able to press it. So just pressing open those seams at the sides of your lining. It does take a little bit of manipulating, but it's quite doable. This will help the lining to sit better inside of your bag. If you don't do it, you'll get slightly, not baggy, because this lining has been shaped to fit, but you'll get, it just won't look as tidy on the inside. So it's easy enough to just, it's only fabric. You are in charge. You are the humans. I'm just opening it with my finger and using my iron to press that seam. Open. I always find one side a lot easier than the other, and I don't really know why. Right, so now I press those side seams open, and they're sitting okay. Now I'm going to take the bottom part of my bag. Now what you may need to do is on the main lining panel where you stitched, you may need to make a small cut on the main lining panel that goes from the outside edge to approximately 1/8 of an inch from that stitching. It will help you to be able to manage this fabric around the corners, and I'm going to do that on all 4 of those ends of my stitching. I'm not cutting right up to the stitching, I'm cutting to about 1/8 of an inch away. So I'm going to pop my hand inside of my lining, and I'm going to just push the end of my lining panel out. I'm going to match the center mark on the end of my lining with that center seam, and I'm going to clip my base in place. Once I've clipped it, I'm going to stitch across using that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance that we've been using. Trying to keep that seam allowance on the sides of the bag open as we stitch across. And we're only stitching from that 3/8 of an inch mark to the 3/8 of an inch mark, so we're creating a rectangle effectively. So you can see that's the end of my 3/8 of an inch mark, and I've just stitched across there. I'm going to do exactly the same on the other end. So I'm matching that center mark on my lining base with the open seam, and just clipping that in place, and then stitching across from the end of my stitching on the long side to the beginning of the stitching on the other long side. So and you can trim off those corners, making sure that you're not cutting into your stitching. And your lining is now complete. Now, if you wanted to press any of these seams open, you could do. I tend to not. I tend to just press the side seams. But that's your lining all complete, and that base fits in there perfectly. What I'm going to do is I am going to press those seams from the inside. I will turn it in the right way and then give them all a press so that they sit nicely. But I'll come back to you and show you the next stage.